He brushes her door with his fingers, then lies down beside me like nothing happened. The mattress takes his weight like it always does, softening under his careful body as if nothing has shifted, nothing has broken. The sheet stretches slightly, the air shifts, and his breath settles into that measured rhythm he always finds faster than I do. I stay still. I let my eyes adjust to the ceiling, watching the faint light from the hallway bend at the door frame, then disappear again like it's afraid of being caught. He didn't turn on the bathroom light. No flush, no faucet. No reason to be out there except the one I'm not supposed to think about. The silence between us is colder than usual, a space filled with unspoken rituals and carefully maintained fictions. I press my fingertips into the edge of the mattress. This bed, this room, this routine, all of it used to feel safe. Now it feels like evidence. Every creak of the hallway floorboards is memorized, every shift in his footsteps registered. I hear things now. I notice timing. 2 nights ago I timed him 12 minutes between the bedroom door closing and his return. Last night, 7. I asked him once weeks ago why he kept checking on her. He smiled like it was the most ridiculous question in the world. Just making sure she's okay. She's a light sleeper. But Leah doesn't stir anymore. She doesn't speak much either. Her door is always locked. I used to think it was just teen mood swings, hormones, the usual distance that happens when a girl turns 15 and thinks she knows everything. But now it feels like something else entirely, something she's afraid to name. I remember when she stopped playing her music abruptly one Saturday morning. No more off-key belting from her bathroom, no more bass thumping under her door. Just silence. I asked her once, "Everything okay, sweetheart?" and she nodded too quickly, too tightly. That was 3 weeks ago. Tonight I tried to stay awake, pretending to scroll on my phone. But he turned toward me in bed and said gently, "You need to rest. You've been working too much." I nodded, clicked my phone off, rolled away. 5 minutes later he left the bed, and now he's back. I feel his hand graze mine under the sheets, not in affection but in reflex, like muscle memory. I don't pull away, but I don't hold it either. My chest feels hollow, a paper bag caught in a wind tunnel, inflating with fear and collapsing with denial. Outside, a truck hums past. Somewhere across the street, a wind chime trembles in the dark. There's a life happening outside these walls. But inside, the stillness is too sharp. My daughter is behind a locked door. My husband is beside me. And I am somewhere in between them, split down the middle by a quiet I can't explain to anyone else. Not yet. I count backward from 20. I learned that trick during Leah's infancy when sleepless nights blurred into morning feedings and lullabies I sang off-key. It used to calm my nerves. Tonight it just measures my paralysis. At 3 I almost get up. I almost check the hallway. Almost tap gently on Leah's door to whisper something what I don't know. I almost wake him and ask again. But I don't. Because asking means hearing an answer. And hearing an answer means I'll never sleep again. So instead, I blink up at the ceiling and try to remember if the hallway light clicked on before he returned. I don't think it did. I press my feet into the mattress, grounding myself. I remind myself that I have no proof, no reason to panic, nothing concrete. But I also remind myself that something inside me is screaming, and it's been doing so for weeks. I finally close my eyes, but sleep doesn't come. Just the rhythm of his breath and the slow, deliberate click of Leah's door as it latches back into place somewhere inside my memory. It might have happened, it might not have. But I remember the sound, and that's enough to keep me awake. I think about the last time Leah hugged me. It was after school one day, random and spontaneous arms thrown around me before I could drop my keys. She whispered, "I missed you today." I'd been at work, nothing unusual, but her hug lingered longer than normal. I'd asked if something was wrong and she shook her head. "Just wanted to hug you." I smiled then. I didn't press. I should have. I think about the way David touches her shoulder in passing, overly casual. Or how he always jokes about how fast she's growing, how pretty she's becoming. I used to smile at that. Now it makes my skin crawl. Something's not right. Something's hiding under this house's skin, and I think I'm the only one still pretending not to see it. Tomorrow I'll ask her again. Not just in passing. I'll sit down across from her, look her in the eye, and ask a question that terrifies me more than any answer could, and I'll watch what happens, not what she says, but what changes in her eyes. Because now I've stopped pretending the house is quiet just because it's peaceful. I know better. Still, I lay here, eyes closed but heart racing, listening for movement that I pray doesn't come. But I know it will. It always does. And I'll be ready. Or at least I'll be awake. I stay quiet not because I trust him, but because I'm not ready to know the truth. Tomorrow I'll ask Leah one question. If she flinches, I'll stop pretending. I'm Monica, 42, a school registrar from Greensboro, North Carolina. The Monday after that night, I packed Leah's lunch in silence. Turkey sandwich, no tomato, an apple she'd probably return untouched, and her preferred water bottle, the one with the faded purple sticker. I placed it on the counter, then stood back and watched her come down the stairs. She didn't meet my eyes. Her shoulders were hunched, like she was still bracing against something even though we weren't speaking yet. David was already gone for work, having left with his usual kiss to my cheek and a, "Don't forget to call that window guy." The front door had clicked closed at 7:12 a.m. sharp, like always. Leah sat at the island stool and quietly opened her lunch bag to check it, like she didn't trust that it was right. I asked softly, "Everything okay with you, baby?" And she flinched barely, but enough. She nodded. "Just tired." Her voice was low, flat. I watched the way her hands hovered around the edge of the bag, then stilled completely. I asked if she wanted a ride today. She shook her head. "I'll walk with Becca." There was no Becca at the door when she left, just Leah walking quickly with earbuds in her hoodie up despite the mild weather. I stood at the window and watched her disappear around the block. The house was too quiet. I used to love this quiet. Now it made my skin crawl. I sat down at the table and let the minutes bleed. I didn't clean the kitchen. I didn't check my work email. I just stared at the spot Leah had sat, imagining what it felt like to be so small, so trapped, and still not able to say it. David called around 9:00 to ask about the contractor estimate. I told him I hadn't called yet. He reminded me with a light joke that I was queen of the to-do list, and I laughed to keep things from sounding strange. After the call, I opened my laptop and Googled home security cameras with shaking fingers. I told myself it was for peace of mind. I picked the model that looked most discreet: ceramic base, no blinking light, wide-angle motion sensitivity. It promised to blend in on a shelf or entryway table. I paid for rush shipping. That afternoon, I checked Leah's room while she was still at school. Her bed was made, but her desk looked untouched for days. No sketch pad, no open books, no crumbs from snacks. Her mirror was clean, too clean for a teen girl's space. But the real change was the lock. Installed on the inside, not standard aftermarket. David had added it months ago when Leah started asking for more privacy. I hadn't thought much of it then. She was a teenager. Now I thought about it constantly. I knocked once softly before leaving the room. That evening, David brought home takeout from their favorite Thai place, Leah's usual order pad. Ew, no broccoli. She looked surprised when he set it in front of her. "Thought you'd be hungry tonight," he said. "You've been skipping dinners." She gave a thin smile, said thank you, and picked at the noodles like they were too heavy for her fork. David asked about her science quiz, and she said, "Fine." I sat across the table and pretended I didn't notice her leg bouncing under the surface. David reached over and tapped her plate with his fork. "Eat, sweetheart. You're still growing." Leah froze. Then she nodded and forced a few bites. I watched her jaw move slow and mechanical, like every chew hurt. After dinner, she went to her room without a word. David offered to clean up. I said I'd do it. I waited until he was upstairs, then stood in the middle of the kitchen and let myself cry, but only for 30 seconds. I timed it. I didn't want to look puffy. I didn't want to lose control. That night, I didn't sleep. I watched the hallway through a crack in the bedroom door, but nothing happened. No creak, no motion. In the morning, David complained about waking up alone. I told him I must have dozed off on the couch. He chuckled and said I should come back to bed more often. My stomach clenched. When Leah came down for breakfast, she didn't ask why I looked tired. She didn't look at me at all. At work, I read the camera manual between phone calls and student schedule corrections. I memorized the setup, the angles, the recording toggle. I went home at 4:00 and waited. When the package arrived, I held it in my lap for an hour before opening it. I placed the camera inside a vase that sat across from Leah's bedroom door. I tested the view from my phone. It worked, crystal clear, wide enough to catch both doors, dim light adjustment flawless. I deleted the test clip. That night, I kissed Leah goodnight outside her door. She didn't open it, just said, "Night, Mom." Her voice cracked on the word Mom. I went to bed. I didn't pretend to sleep. At 1:42 a.m., I saw David get up. He walked past the vase. The feed caught him perfectly. He paused outside Leah's door. I felt my breath catch. He turned back, entered the bathroom, washed his hands, brushed his teeth again, returned to bed. I stared at the ceiling. In the morning, he acted normal. Leah was quiet. The next night, the camera caught nothing. He never left the bed. But the third night, I caught him. It was 2:14 a.m. The screen lit up. He stepped out. He didn't hesitate. He moved straight to her door, paused, touched it, brushed his fingers over the knob like he was thinking. Then he opened it and slipped inside. My hand trembled so badly I almost dropped the phone. I waited. The minutes dragged. 4 minutes. 6. 9. Then he stepped out again. Calm, silent. He closed her door, adjusted his shirt, and walked past the vase. He looked directly toward the hallway like he sensed something, but not at the vase. Not at the camera. Not yet. He went back to bed. I watched him lie down beside me. I watched the feed, and him, at the same time. I couldn't breathe. I didn't blink. I didn't move. In the morning I saved the file. I named it 2:14. Confirmed. I transferred it twice to 2 different folders. I hid one on a flash drive I wore on a chain around my neck. When Leah came down for breakfast, she didn't look at either of us. David kissed her on the top of the head and she flinched. I gripped the edge of the counter until my knuckles burned. He left for work. I walked her to the door. "Leah," I whispered, "is everything okay?" She looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in days. Her eyes were watery but sharp. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said, "I'm fine, Mom, don't worry," and she left. I stood there in the doorway long after she was gone. I watched him slip back into bed while my world stayed frozen at the edge of her door. Tomorrow I'll re-watch the footage. Not to confirm it, just to remind myself I'm not crazy. The next morning I stood at the kitchen sink long after the dishes were done. The faucet dripped every 9 seconds. I counted. I let the cold air from the window settle against my chest. I wasn't waiting for anything in particular. I was waiting for everything. David came down, freshly showered, dressed in his usual pale blue shirt and charcoal slacks, tie already knotted, watch already set. He poured his coffee, kissed my temple, and said, "You okay today? You look tired." I nodded. "Didn't sleep well." He took a sip and said, "You need to learn how to shut your mind off. You always do this." I smiled faintly. Leah didn't come down for another 10 minutes. When she did, she looked like a ghost of herself. Her hoodie was too large, sleeves covering her fingers. She didn't touch her breakfast, just tucked a granola bar in her bag and said she wasn't hungry. David offered her a ride. She said no. I offered too. She said she'd walk. Again, she left without a jacket. I watched her from the front window, shrinking with each step. After she turned the corner, I walked upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and opened the footage again. I needed to see if what I thought I saw was really what happened. I clicked play. I watched David leave our bed, walk past the vase, pause outside her door, then open it and step inside. I froze the frame as the door widened. He didn't hesitate. That was the part I couldn't shake, how casually he moved. Like it was normal. Like he had the right. I let the video play until he exited. Calm. Tucked in. Not a single muscle out of place. I clicked save again, even though it already existed. I named the copy 2:14 raw. Then I opened a blank document and started typing. I wasn't sure what I was writing. A log A, statement I started with. Third night, 2:14 a.m. David enters Leah's room. Duration approximately 11 minutes. Exit 2:25 a.m. Then I added, no signs of distress on Leah's end, unclear if awake. David's body language confident, familiar, no hesitation. Then I stopped. My hand was shaking. I hit save. Then I closed the file and opened a new tab and searched for family lawyers in Greensboro. I didn't call anyone. Just read names. Just hovered over numbers. At lunch I heard from my assistant that David had called me twice at the front desk. She said he sounded casual, maybe too casual. I told her I'd call him back. I didn't. That night Leah didn't come down for dinner. David asked where she was and I said upstairs. I'll bring her something later. He shrugged. Teenagers, he muttered. He ate pad thai. I drank tea. He talked about work, a new client with a boat, something about a property tax loophole. I nodded when I needed to. Then he said, you should take a day off this week. Maybe we go somewhere, reset. You've been wired lately. I looked at him and wondered what it was like to lie so easily, so fluidly. I said maybe. That night he slept like a rock. I watched the camera feed. He didn't move. Leah's door never opened. I checked twice. In the morning I made waffles. Leah came down, took one look at the plate and said, thanks. I asked if she wanted to ride with me. She hesitated, then nodded. In the car we sat in silence for the first 3 blocks. Then she said, You ever feel like people forget who they used to be? I didn't answer right away. Then I said, sometimes. Why? She looked out the window. I think it's easy. Forgetting. When it's convenient. I didn't ask what she meant. I just let it sit. When she got out, she said, thanks for the ride. I said, text me when you're done. She nodded. No hug. No wave. That night I skipped dinner, told David I had a headache. He offered to bring me soup. I said no. I laid in bed with my laptop and watched the footage again. This time I noticed the shadow. Right before he entered Leah's room, he leaned in slightly, as if listening. I paused it there. I printed the frame. Not for proof, just because I needed to see it in the real world on paper like I wasn't making it up. I tucked the printout into a folder in my desk, labeled Taxes. The next morning, Leah left early. Didn't eat. David watched her go, then turned to me and said, She's been off lately, huh? I said nothing. He sipped his coffee. Maybe she's just hormonal. This age is weird. I said, or maybe she's scared. He blinked. Scared? Of what I said I don't know. Then I walked away before I could say more. At work I called the lawyer. I used my office phone. Said my name was Monica Ellis. That I needed advice on protective filings. I didn't give details. Just asked for a consultation. They said earliest opening was next Tuesday. I said I'd take it. That night I knocked on Leah's door. She didn't answer. I said, I just want to talk. Not about him. About you. Still no answer. I waited. Then, I walked away. 10 minutes later she came down, stood in the kitchen doorway. What do you want to know? I turned off the stove. I want to know if you feel safe. She stared at me for a long time. Then said, what would you do if I said no? I said I'd believe you. She looked away. Then, no, I don't. I swallowed hard. Because of him she didn't nod, but she didn't shake her head either. Then she said, I can't prove anything, but I locked the door for a reason. Then she turned and went back upstairs. I stood there heart-hammering. The next morning I printed another frame. I wrote on the back Leah said she locks it for a reason. I placed it in the same folder. David didn't notice the change in my posture, didn't see the way I watched him. But I had already stopped being afraid of what the truth might be. Now I was just afraid of how long I had waited to act. I stopped fearing what the truth might be and started fearing how long I'd ignored it. Tomorrow I'll ask Leah to tell me everything, even if it breaks me. It started with Mrs. Barron calling my name from her porch. I was taking the trash out, pretending not to notice the silence that had become a third presence in our house. The bag was heavier than usual, probably because I had stuffed the shredded printouts of frame stills into the bottom of the bin beneath food scraps and paper towels, and last Sunday's paper. Monica, she called again a little louder. I turned. She was leaning on the porch rail, one gloved hand holding pruning shears, her eyes squinting beneath a sun visor. Heard y'all pacing around the other night. All okay, I forced a smile. Yeah, just insomnia. You know how it is. She nodded but didn't move. Saw David out late, around 2 or so, didn't mean to pry. My floodlight picks up motion and I look up out of habit. I grip the trash bag tighter. He probably couldn't sleep either. She tilted her head. He looked like he was looking for something, back and forth between the driveway and the front steps. Not like him. David's always been a straight-line man, never paces. I said nothing. Anyway, just figured I'd ask. You okay? I said. We're fine. Just tired. She nodded slowly. Well, if you ever need anything, you know I'm just across the fence. My nephew works with the sheriff's office now. Small world, huh? I thanked her and went back inside before she could read the stiffness in my face. I stood in the laundry room with the trash still in my hands, heart pounding. That night after dinner, I waited until David was flipping through channels in the living room. I asked Leah if she wanted to help me with something outside. She followed me onto the porch. I'm going to ask him, I whispered. She didn't respond. Not about everything, just enough to see how he reacts. Okay, she said. Do you want me to be there? No, I said. But I want you to watch. She blinked. From where? The upstairs window. His face. I want you to see it. She didn't ask why. She just nodded. I waited until David came out front to smoke. He never did it in the house, and I stepped into the driveway, standing under the same porch light. Mrs. Barron's motion sensor would have triggered. You've been going outside at night, I said. He looked up, lighter in hand. What? Around 2. Maybe later. More than once. He took a drag, exhaled slowly. Can't sleep. I walk sometimes. Didn't know I needed permission. Why not tell me? Didn't think it mattered. He looked at me. "What's this about Mrs. Barron saw you pacing?" He chuckled. "That woman watches the street like it's her job. Probably thought I was casing the place." "Why pace?" he shrugged. "Thought I heard something one night. Didn't want to wake you. Probably a raccoon." "And Leah," he stiffened. "What about her? Have you been checking her door, checking it at night?" "Jesus, Monica. Are you seriously accusing me of something right now? I'm asking you a question, a loaded one." "What the hell is this? I'm just asking." "No, you're not. You're building something in your head. Have you gone in her room at night?" His jaw locked. "This is disgusting. Answer the question." He stepped forward. "I love our daughter. I would never do anything to hurt her. How dare you?" "You didn't answer. Because it doesn't deserve one." I heard the screen door open behind me. Leah's face appeared in the second-floor window, just a shadow backlit. David's eyes flicked upward for half a second, then back to me. "I don't know what you think you're doing," he said, "but this isn't it. Whatever you've imagined, it's wrong." I turned my head slightly, just enough that he would know I wasn't the only one listening. "Then tell me why the hallway camera caught you opening her door." His face didn't change, not immediately, but his breath hitched, just once. "What camera? The one in the vase?" "The one you passed every night. You're spying on me. I was protecting her." He shook his head. "This is insane. I have footage. Show me." "I will. When it matters." "What does that mean?" "It means I've already backed it up, and I'm not the only one who's seen it now." His mouth opened, then closed. He dropped the cigarette onto the pavement and stepped on it. "You need help," he said. "You're unraveling." "Maybe. But I'm not the one walking into a locked room at 2 a.m. He didn't reply. Just walked past me back into the house. The door slammed harder than it needed to. Leah was gone from the window. I stayed outside until I saw Mrs. Barron's porch light flick on. She waved at me small, slow. I didn't wave back. I walked around to the side of the house and looked at our security camera, one of the ones David had installed years ago, angled toward the front path, still blinking, still watching. That night, Leah slept in my bed. She didn't ask. She just knocked softly and I pulled the covers back. We didn't talk, but I held her hand until she fell asleep. David didn't come in, didn't knock, didn't speak a word to either of us the next morning, but the vase was turned slightly, just a few degrees, and the camera was unplugged. He said I needed help while the vase sat unplugged behind him. Tomorrow I'll install a second camera, one he won't find. The new camera arrived 2 days later, hidden inside what looked like a smoke detector. I installed it above the hallway arch centered between Leah's door and ours, angled slightly downward. It had night vision motion tracking, a separate app, and most importantly, a cloud backup that didn't require physical transfer. I didn't tell Leah about this one. The less she knew, the safer she'd be if David ever questioned her. After the vase camera had been unplugged, I checked the footage again. He had done it just after I'd gone upstairs. I watched him move into the hallway, hesitate, then approach the vase. No facial reaction, no confusion, just calm, practiced silence. The plug came out with one tug. He turned it barely and walked back toward the kitchen. No glance toward Leah's door. That was the part that made my stomach drop. He wasn't afraid. He didn't even look behind him, like he was used to cleaning up. That night, I didn't tell him I had replaced the camera. He didn't mention the confrontation. We sat through dinner in silence. Leah didn't come downstairs. I said I'd check on her later. David nodded. I could feel him watching me from across the table. I ate slowly, carefully, making sure my hands didn't shake. When he finally stood up to clear his plate, I exhaled like I'd been holding my breath since morning. Later, I told Leah through her door, "Sleep in your room tonight." "I'll be awake," she whispered back. "Are you sure?" "Yes." "Is he still here?" "Yes. But I'm here too." "Okay." She didn't sound convinced, but the lock clicked softly. That night, I watched the feed from the new camera in real time. Midnight passed, 1 a.m. David shifted beside me in bed, restless. At 1:36, he got up. I didn't move. I watched his shape pass under the camera, a slow, gray blur in night vision. He paused outside Leah's door. He didn't touch it this time, just stood there, breathing maybe, or listening. Then he turned and walked into the bathroom. The light didn't come on. A minute passed. 2. Then he came back and got into bed. I reviewed the feed twice before dawn. Nothing definitive. But something about the stillness in him felt like waiting, like calculation. The next morning, I found the new camera still plugged in, still recording. He hadn't found it yet. Leah had already left for school when I came downstairs. David was on the porch, coffee in hand, scrolling through his phone. "Morning," he said. "Morning. You sleep better, not really." He nodded. "You were tossing a lot." "Sorry." "No, I mean I just noticed." He took a sip. "You think Leah's okay?" I paused. "Why? She seemed closed off." "She is. You think it's school. I think she doesn't feel safe." He looked at me. "Because of what you said the other night, because of what she feels. I trust her instincts. You're treating me like I've done something." "Have you?" He set his mug down a little too hard. "You know what, I'm going to work early." He walked inside. The door slammed a second later. I stood on the porch and stared at Mrs. Barron's house across the street. Her curtains moved slightly, but I couldn't tell if it was wind or eyes. That afternoon I downloaded the footage again and clipped the segment of David standing outside Leah's door. I marked it 1:36, standby. I added it to the growing folder. Then I opened a blank document and wrote out the timeline. Night 1, no movement. Night 2, unplugged vase camera. Night 3, stood outside door. No entry, no light, no sound. I printed it and folded the page into the folder. When Leah got home, I told her, "New camera's in." She nodded. "He unplugged the last one," she said. "I know. I heard it. I know. Will the new one catch audio? No. But it'll catch everything else." She looked at me. "Do you think he knows?" "He suspects. But he doesn't know where this one is. What if he finds it? Then we'll already have what we need." That night, she ate dinner with me in the kitchen. David stayed in the den watching a documentary about submarines. We didn't speak. He didn't look up when I passed behind him with a load of laundry. At 10:00, Leah went upstairs. At 10:15, I followed. David came to bed at 11:00. I watched him undress. His hands didn't tremble. He climbed into bed and said, "You know this distance thing, it's not sustainable." I didn't answer. He added, "We're married. If something's wrong, you talk. You don't set traps." I said, "You went into her room." "No. I saw it." "You saw shadows. You saw me near a door." "That's not proof." "She flinched when you hugged her. Teenagers flinch. You think this is abuse. You're labeling something you don't understand. She's scared of you, because you're feeding her paranoia." She asked me to keep her door locked. I installed that lock. "I know. And now I'm regretting it." He rolled onto his side. "I think you need to talk to someone, maybe a counselor. You're spiraling." I didn't reply. At 1:58, he left the bed again. I watched through the feed. He didn't go near Leah's door. He went into the garage, stayed there for 15 minutes, returned empty-handed, slept like a rock. I checked the garage in the morning. One shelf had been wiped clean. A hammer was missing. So was a screwdriver set. I took pictures, added them to the folder. Later that day, I called the lawyer again. Moved the appointment up. Canceled a work meeting. When David asked, I said I had a migraine. When Leah got home, I asked if she'd noticed anything missing from the garage. She said, "The hammer. I always use that one when I hang stuff. Anything else, I think his toolbox is lighter." "Don't go in there," I said. "Don't even open the door." "Okay." That night, I didn't sleep. The camera caught nothing. But the silence felt heavier. Like the absence of movement was more dangerous than presence. Inaction could be a plan. And I wasn't ready to guess what kind. He didn't go near her door, but the hammer was gone. Tomorrow, I'll take the folder to someone who can make it matter. The file was named 2:14, confirmed. MP4, but I renamed it before I left the house. I didn't want to show up to the sheriff's office with a file name that sounded like an accusation. I called it Hallway, Night Footage, MP4, and burned it onto a flash drive, one of those silver ones that looked like a car key, nothing fancy but solid. I also printed 3 stills, one of David approaching Leah's door, one with the timestamp 2:14:03 a.m., where his hand is on the doorknob, and one at 2:25:01 a.m., where he's walking away. The hallway light was off in all 3, but the infrared captured everything: his body, his face, the exact movement of his hand. I clipped each image into a manila folder along with my typed log and the earlier printout of the motionless vase camera footage. I added the hammer photos from the garage shelf. I labeled the folder Monica Ellis. Private. When I arrived at the station, I gave the name the lawyer had coached me to use, Deputy Harris. The receptionist nodded like she already knew I was coming. The waiting room was colder than expected, the kind of government chill that smells faintly like toner and old carpet. Harris came out 10 minutes later. Young, mid-30s, brown skin, square jaw, steady eyes. He didn't shake my hand, just nodded and gestured to follow. "Conference room's open," he said. I sat across from him at a long, rectangular table with scuffed corners. The walls were off-white, nothing on them except a framed photo of the station's original founders. "You're here about something domestic," he asked gently. "Yes," I said. "My husband, and our daughter." "Go ahead." I pushed the folder forward. "I'm not here to accuse, I'm here to report something I saw." He opened the folder slowly. Looked at the stills first. Time-stamped. "From 2 nights ago," I said. "And the footage, on the flash drive." He picked it up, turned it over, then placed it in his coat pocket. "Did your daughter disclose anything?" "Not yet. But she told me she locks the door for a reason. That she doesn't feel safe." "Has she ever mentioned inappropriate contact?" "No. But she's withdrawn. She flinches. She won't eat around him. She avoids physical touch. She sleeps in my room when she can." "Has he threatened her?" "Not verbally." "Not that I've heard. But there's something happening in that hallway at night, and I've got 11 minutes of footage that doesn't lie." Harris nodded. "Is your daughter aware you're here?" "No." I didn't want to scare her, but I think she'd talk to someone neutral. He made a few notes on a lined yellow pad. "We can arrange a wellness check, possibly bring in CPS. Would you be willing to let us interview her?" "Yes. I want you to. But I also want this to be careful. If he knows too soon, I don't know what he'll do." "Understood. What's your home setup like? Any weapons?" "He keeps a toolbox in the garage. Hammer's missing." "I noticed it last night." Harris raised an eyebrow. "Do you feel in immediate danger?" "Not yet, but I'm losing track of how long I've been guessing." He nodded again. "I'll log this as a non-emergency domestic concern with surveillance evidence. We'll open a case." "Has he been physically violent toward you in the past?" "No. But he's calm in the way people are when they've rehearsed." Harris looked at me carefully. "You said the footage is 11 minutes. From entry to exit, no sound, but no hesitation, no knock. He just walks in. Can I have a phone number to reach you directly?" I gave it. "Do not contact the house," I said. "Only me, my cell." "Understood." I asked. "What happens next?" "I'll review the footage. If there's cause, we'll request an interview. Possibly send someone to speak to your daughter at school. If you're comfortable, we'll start the paper trail toward a temporary protective order." I nodded. "And if he finds out, you call 911. Immediately. Don't engage. Just get safe." I thanked him. My hands were cold as I stood. "You did the right thing," he said. "You didn't overreact. I waited too long. But you came in. That matters." Outside, the sun felt fake, all light and no heat. I got into my car and sat there for a full minute before starting the engine. Leah texted me at 1:22 p.m. "Math test done. Can you pick me up?" I replied, "On my way." When she got in the car, she didn't ask where I'd been, but she looked at my face like she already knew. That night we ate dinner in silence. David was home but distracted. I watched him. He didn't look up much. Didn't say much. At 9:00 he announced, "I've got some paperwork to finish in the garage." Now I asked, "Yeah. Need help?" "No. Need me to bring anything? I'm fine." He left through the side door. I waited 90 seconds, then opened the new camera feed. The garage was in partial view from its edge. I saw him open drawers, move things. I checked the time, 9:12 p.m. At 9:17, he closed the drawers, left, went back inside. At 9:22, I heard his footsteps pass my bedroom. He didn't stop. Leah texted me from her room at 10:03. "He tried my door." "Just now," I replied. "Don't move. I've got the log." I saved the camera's motion trigger file and renamed it 3:14 Tridor 22P3. I added the system timestamp and MAC address, 1:00:3:17 p.m. Target ID, hallway motion. Subject ID, male. Movement, 3.2 seconds. No entry, no sound. I printed the page, added it to the folder. Monica Ellis, private. Tomorrow I'd drive it back to the station. The file was 11 minutes long, but the truth was shorter. He opened her door and walked in. Tomorrow, Deputy Harris will see the footage. Then it won't be just me, who knows. By the time Harris called me back, I already knew what he was going to say. The tone of his voicemail wasn't urgent, but it wasn't casual either. It was clipped, formal, careful. "Mrs. Ellis, this is Deputy Harris." I reviewed the footage. I'd like to speak with you and your daughter when possible. Please call me back directly. I listened to it twice. Leah was still at school. David was in the garage again. I watched from the kitchen window as he moved boxes around. Not building anything, not fixing anything, just moving things. When I called Harris back, he picked up immediately. "Thanks for getting back to me," he said. "I wanted to let you know I reviewed all materials in your folder, the time-stamped clip, the stills, and your written log." I waited. He continued, "I also sent the footage to our digital forensics unit to confirm authenticity. No cuts, no tampering, it's clean. And we're opening a formal case. I've filed the request for a wellness interview with your daughter. It'll happen off-site, quiet, discreet." I exhaled slowly. "When, tomorrow, if she agrees. Someone from our youth advocacy division will come to your home and explain everything. She'll have the option to go to the station or a neutral setting. What about David? We don't contact him yet. We don't escalate unless the interview confirms risk. But the footage is troubling. The time of night, the behavior, and the consistency over multiple nights." I said nothing. "Mrs. Ellis," he added, "you've done everything right so far. But I need you to prepare. This may trigger a no-contact order." "That's the goal," I said. "My daughter hasn't slept through the night in weeks." He paused. "And you? I stopped sleeping a while ago." That night, I sat on the edge of my bed and held Leah's door key in my palm. It was one of those brushed steel privacy keys, shaped like a coin with a slit. I hadn't used it in weeks. I hadn't needed to. But tonight I wanted it near me. David came in late from the garage, wiped his hands on a rag and said, "Fixing the mower." "Belt's loose again." I nodded. "Long day?" he asked. "I ran errands." "That code for lawyer stuff." "That code for groceries," I said. "You don't want to start this again, Monica." "Start what? The game, the paranoia, the spying." You unplugged the first camera. "Because it was invasive. It was watching the hallway. That's not normal behavior. Neither is standing outside your daughter's door at 200 a.m. He walked into the bathroom. I heard the toothbrush running. Water. Silence. Then his voice muffled but sharp. "You keep pushing this and you'll regret it." I stood up. Was that a threat? He stepped out slowly. It was advice. I went into Leah's room that night and told her someone from the department would be visiting. She didn't panic. She nodded. "Will I be safe?" she asked. "Yes. Even if I tell them everything, especially if you do." "What if they don't believe me? They've already seen the video." "Then it won't matter what I say." I reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. "Tell them the truth," I said. "Tell them what you remember, what you fear, what you felt. Even if it's incomplete. Even if it's blurry." "He touched me," she whispered. "Not every night. Not always the same way. But sometimes I'd wake up and his hand would be there like it belonged. And then it was gone." I closed my eyes. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "Because he made it feel like a dream. Like I was being dramatic." "You're not." "But what if I was wrong?" "You're not," I said again, and this time my voice cracked. The next day, the advocate came at noon. Her name was Tasha, soft-voiced, no uniform. She wore a denim jacket and carried a folder that matched mine in size. She sat with Leah in the backyard under the oak tree. I watched from the kitchen window as Leah answered questions I'd never dared ask. It lasted 28 minutes. Tasha came inside alone. "She's brave," she said. "She's also very articulate. There's more than enough to escalate. Will it happen now? We'll file for the temporary protective order this afternoon. You'll be contacted about safe housing options if needed. We're not leaving. Then we'll arrange for him to." I nodded. She paused. She said, "You believed her first." That's what gave her the courage. I believed too late. But you believed. That night, I didn't speak to David. Neither did Leah. The tension in the house wasn't loud, but it was final. He could feel it. He moved through the kitchen slower. He looked at Leah longer, but not like before. Now it was wary, like she had become something dangerous. He asked me once, "Everything okay?" And I said, "Ask her." He didn't. At 11:47 p.m., my phone vibrated. "Incoming temporary protective order issued. Active 1200A. Serve notice within 24 hours. Subject David Ellis. Conditions: no contact, vacate premises 500 feet minimum radius." I didn't show it to him. I waited. At 6:13 a.m., there was a knock at the door. Sheriff's deputy. David was still in bed. I let them in. They asked him to step outside. He argued. They repeated the order. He changed clothes in silence, grabbed a duffel bag. looked at me once before the door closed behind him. Leah came down 10 minutes later. She stood at the bottom of the stairs and said, "Is it over?" "He's gone," I said. "For now. And later, we'll keep the cameras. We'll keep the records. And we'll keep talking." She nodded. "Okay." I made her pancakes. Burned the first batch. She ate the second. She whispered. He made it feel like a dream, but now it was all wide awake. "Tomorrow we'll change the locks, not just on the doors but on our memory." Leah asked me if she could sleep on the couch. It was 2 nights after the protective order was enforced, and the house still felt like it was holding its breath. I asked if she wanted to be alone. She shook her head. "I want the stairs in front of me," she said. "I want to see if anyone's coming." I didn't argue. I brought her a blanket, one of the thick ones from the back closet she used to curl under when she was little and had fevers. I handed it to her and asked, "Do you want the hall light on?" "No, just the camera." "It's still on." She settled in, pulling her knees up the remote tucked under one arm like a weapon. I watched her until her eyelids flickered. Then I sat at the kitchen table and opened the logbook again. I wrote in pen slowly, March 17, Day 2 post-order, subject removed, child alert but anxious, sleep fragmented, no breach yet. I closed it and slid it into the folder. The folder felt heavier now, as if the weight of everything inside had become physical. The next morning Leah didn't eat. Again. She stared at her cereal until it turned to paste. I asked if she wanted to go back to school. "Maybe Monday," she said. "Not yet." I didn't push. We walked the block together. She kept close. I noticed how she scanned faces, even the mailman's. Every sound behind us made her shoulders jump. I asked her, "Do you feel like it's safe to say it out loud now?" "Say what?" "Everything. What happened?" She blinked fast. "Parts of it, not all. I think I forget on purpose. That's allowed. But sometimes I remember pieces and then hate myself. That's not your fault. It doesn't feel like it wasn't mine," she said. "It feels like I opened a door in my head and let him in, and then shut it too late." I didn't answer right away. We stood near the edge of the curb. The school was just across the next street. The bell hadn't rung yet. "He didn't need your permission," I said. "And you didn't have a key." She nodded, eyes still on the sidewalk. "When I was 9, I remember waking up and thinking he was just checking on me. I even said thanks one time." My stomach turned. "You were being polite, because you didn't know. But I know now. And you said it. You named it. That's power." She sniffed. "Can you be powerful and broken at the same time? I think that's the only way power ever shows up in real life." She looked up at me. "If he tries to come back, I want to be the one who tells him to leave." "You'll get that chance," I said. "But you don't owe him anything." She nodded. "I want to forget how his footsteps sound." "We will." She crossed the street and didn't look back. I watched until the front doors closed behind her. That afternoon I sat with Tasha again on a follow-up call. She asked about Leah's appetite, her sleep, her openness. I told her the truth. Tasha asked if Leah had drawn anything lately. I said, "Not yet." "Art helps," she said, "even if it's messy." That night I brought home a sketch pad. Left it outside Leah's room. Didn't say a word. She didn't mention it the next morning, but the night after I saw pencil shavings in the bathroom trash. On day 5, Leah finally asked, "Can I ask you something weird?" I said, "Always." "When did you stop trusting him?" I took a deep breath. "The first time I noticed you stopped talking at dinner." "How long ago was that?" "Too long." "Why didn't you say something?" "Because I didn't want to believe what I saw. And because it felt easier to explain it away than to call it what it might be." "You thought I was just being moody." "No," I said. "I thought I was being paranoid. And that's a convenient lie when you're scared of what believing would mean." She stared at the ceiling. "Sometimes I dreamed he was someone else, like a copy of him but different." "That's not weird," I said. "That's survival. I feel like I don't know who I am without him in the house. But I also feel like I'm finally allowed to breathe. Both can be true. Do you ever wonder if he's watching us?" "Sometimes. But that's why we document everything. Every moment. Every night." She nodded. "I don't want to keep the blanket anymore. The one I used when I was little. It feels contaminated. We can donate it." "No," she said. "I want to burn it." I said, "Then we'll burn it." We went into the backyard that Saturday. I built a small fire pit out of bricks. We sat in silence. I handed her a lighter. She hesitated, then struck it. The flame caught slow, then fast. The blanket shriveled, darkened, and folded in on itself. She didn't cry. I didn't either. But when it was done, she said, "That helped. The ash sat in the pit like a secret that finally confessed. That night she slept with her door open. The camera still recorded. I watched the footage in the morning anyway, just to make sure. All clear. Zero movement, zero ghosts, just stillness. I added it to the log, March 23. Subject remains absent. Child slept with door open. Morning check clear. Leah came into the kitchen and poured herself cereal. She ate it, all of it. When she was done, she looked at me and said, "You know what I want next, what to tell someone who doesn't know. Someone at school. No. Someone who can't pretend they didn't see it." I understood. She wanted to speak it out loud to someone official. She wanted it recorded, in ink. Not just on video. That would come next. She lit the blanket herself and watched it burn like a piece of her own silence. Tomorrow we go, file the report and say it out loud, all of it. The report was 6 pages long, printed on stiff off-white stock that smelled like toner and cold air. I held it in my lap the whole ride home. The top corner had the case number in bold, NC 421587DV. Below that, the heading, Incident Report, Domestic Concern, Minor Protection Filing. Filed by Officer Nadine Keats, Badge 2741. Date March 24. I stared at that line over and over like repetition would make it more permanent. Leah sat beside me in the passenger seat, silent but not tense. Her knees were pulled up under her hoodie. She didn't fidget. She didn't ask to see the papers. But she said, "Did they believe me?" "Yes," I said. "They documented everything, even the dream parts, even those, what about what I didn't say? They read that too," I said. "In the gaps." "Okay," she whispered. That morning we'd walked into the downtown precinct through the side entrance. Harris had met us with Keats, who wore no sunglasses and no badge visible. Just a gray coat and soft voice. She didn't speak over Leah. She let her stop mid-sentence and wait. She let the pauses do the work. When Leah got stuck, she asked, "What do you want me to write down?" And Leah replied, "The parts that make me feel cold inside." Keats nodded and kept her pen moving. She didn't type. She wrote it all longhand, like the story mattered more that way. The report included the camera timestamps, the footage confirmation log from the tech lab, and Leah's full verbal statement. There was a section titled Subject History, where my notes from the folder were summarized: camera unplugging, garage tool removal, known behavioral triggers, recent evictions of subject from premises. I had never seen our life compressed like that. It made me sick to read. But it was also exact. No exaggeration, no missing pieces, just plain horror in administrative font. When we pulled into the driveway, I tucked the folder under my arm and walked Leah inside. She didn't go straight to her room. She sat on the bottom step and said, "Will they take him to court?" "Yes," I said. "Eventually. If the case holds, will I have to talk? Only if you want to." "What if I do?" "Then you will." She nodded. "I want to." I placed the report in the desk drawer where the other folder lived. Labeled it Evidence. Legal 2. Sealed it in an envelope. I wrote the case number across the front and clipped a copy of Keats's card to the top. That night, we both slept in our own rooms. The hallway light stayed on, not because we needed it anymore, but because there was no one left to turn it off. At 3:02 a.m., I woke up anyway. Reflex. I checked the camera. No motion. I checked the garage feed. Still. The motion logs were blank. No sound. I made tea. At the table, I opened the report again and reread the final page, subject removed under Temporary Protective Order Number 2741 TPD, compliant with North Carolina statutes on domestic safety. Child witness interviewed voluntarily. Findings suggest high emotional and psychological distress resulting from patterns of behavior consistent with predatory grooming. Recommendation: extended protection, therapeutic follow-up home safety assessment. I closed the file and stared at the steam curling off my mug. For the first time, I didn't feel like I had to write it down myself. Someone else had finally written it for me. In the morning, Leah came down dressed in jeans. She hadn't worn jeans in weeks. She poured cereal, ate it without a word, then said, "Can we go to the park later?" "Yes," I said. "Want to bring the sketch pad?" "No. Just want to sit near other people." "Okay. People who aren't afraid of me." "No one's afraid of you." "They used to be." "No. They were afraid of what they didn't want to admit. That's different." She wiped her mouth and said, "Do you think he ever loved us? I think he loved what we gave him, but not what we were." "That's not the same thing." "No," I said. It really isn't. We spent the afternoon on a bench near the swings. She didn't draw. She didn't cry. She just watched the sky. At one point she said, "If I see him again, I don't want to run." "You won't have to," I said. "But if I freeze, then I'll unfreeze you." She smiled. "You always did know how to do that." That night she went to bed early. I sat in the living room and played the camera feed in reverse, just for a moment. Just to remember what it looked like when he left. The case number was 6 digits, but to me it was the first sentence of her freedom. Tomorrow we'll visit the advocacy center and start calling this healing. I didn't plan on opening her journal. I told myself it was hers, that I needed to respect the privacy she'd fought so hard to reclaim. But the night after we visited the advocacy center, when she fell asleep on the couch with the television still glowing, faint blue across her face, I found myself standing in her doorway, staring at the notebook, half hidden under her pillow. It was the same one she'd carried for years, the one with the torn spine and stickers from old art stores she used to love. Something about it called to me, not in a prying way, but in a quiet, urgent way, like it contained a missing piece of a story I'd only heard fragments of. I picked it up gently, as if it were something breakable, and sat on the edge of her bed. I didn't flip through the pages. I opened to where the bookmark sat, a folded receipt from a craft supply store. The entry began mid-sentence, as if she'd started writing one night and picked up the next morning without a new line. If I scream and wake up, I pretend I didn't, because pretending is easier than trying to explain a nightmare that keeps happening when I'm awake. My breath caught. I kept reading. Sometimes he stands near the door. Sometimes he sits on the floor like he's watching something I can't see. Once he touched my shoulder and I couldn't move. I felt like my body was made of sand, like I'd fall apart if I breathed wrong. My hands shook. The next paragraph was shorter. "Mom would believe me, but if I tell her, he'll know I told, and he'll get better at not being seen." I closed the journal too hard. The sound echoed in the room. I pressed it to my forehead and cried silently, shoulders shaking but breath steady. I didn't want Leah to hear me. I didn't want to wake her. I cried until my chest ached, until my hands went numb, until my throat burned. I cried for every night I'd told myself she was just moody, just hormonal, just tired. I cried for every time David had smiled at me while carrying this secret behind his teeth. When I finally stood, the room felt different, lighter in some places, darker in others. Like the journal had shifted something in the air, revealing old shadows. I tucked it back under her pillow, exactly where it had been. I wiped my face and walked into the bathroom, splashing water on my cheeks until they stung. I stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't look like a mother. I looked like someone halfway between fury and collapse. I went back downstairs. Leah was still asleep. I placed a blanket over her and turned off the TV. I sat on the floor beside the couch and stayed there until morning. When she woke, she blinked at me and said, "Why are you on the floor? You fell asleep," I said. "I didn't want you to wake up alone." She nodded. "Did I say anything in my sleep?" "No," I lied. "You just breathed." She sat up slowly, hair tangled, hoodie twisted. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. "Of course. I think I'm scared to feel safe." "That's normal. But what if it means I'm broken? It means you survived something you didn't have words for. Safety feels foreign when danger is familiar." She looked at me. When he touched my shoulder, I thought maybe I had imagined it, because the next day he was normal, like nothing happened. "That's what people like him do," I said. "They build 2 versions of themselves, one for the world and one for the dark. Which one did you see first? The one he showed me, the one he wanted me to love, and the other I saw pieces, but I didn't understand them." "Do you hate him?" she asked quietly. I sat with the question. "I hate what he took from you, and I hate that I didn't see it sooner." "Can you hate him for me?" she whispered. "Yes," I said. "I can." That afternoon, we had our scheduled meeting with the therapist from the advocacy center. A small office, 2 chairs, a little table with tissues stacked neatly. Leah spoke softly at first, but as the minutes passed, her voice grew steadier. The therapist didn't push. She let Leah decide the pace. I watched my daughter talk about things no child should ever have to say out loud. I watched the way she curled her sleeves between her fingers, the way she paused before saying the word touch. At one point, she looked at me and said, "I wrote some of it down." The therapist asked, "Do you want to share it?" "Not yet," Leah said, "but I want Mom to know that I didn't make it up." "I know," I said immediately. "I never thought you did." After the session, we sat in the car for a long while. Neither of us buckled our seatbelts. We just breathed. Leah leaned her head against the window. I feel like I opened a door, she said. A real one. You did, I replied. And you walked through it. Is it supposed to hurt this much? Yes, but not forever. She closed her eyes. Good. When we got home, the house felt strangely smaller, like the walls had shifted inward. I checked the cameras out of habit. Still. Quiet. Empty. I opened the logbook and added today's entry, March 25. Report filed successfully. Child disclosed further details. Emotional state fragile, but strengthening. No breaches. Subject remains absent. I placed the entry behind the protective order copy. Then, for the first time since this began, I locked the folder with a small brass key. That night, Leah slept with her bedroom light off. She left the door cracked open. She didn't ask me to stay in the hallway. She didn't text me at 2:00 a.m. She didn't check the feed. I checked it anyway. At 3:17 a.m. I sat on the edge of my bed and listened to the silence. A real silence. The kind that comes after storms when debris settles and the air hasn't decided whether to feel heavy or clean. In the morning, Leah walked into the kitchen wearing a sweater I hadn't seen in years. She poured herself a glass of orange juice and asked, "Do we have any of the blueberry muffins left?" "Yes," I said, surprised. "On the counter." She grabbed one, warmed it for 10 seconds, and ate it standing by the sink. She looked out the window and said, "I want to keep going. I want to finish this." "You will. And after we live." She smiled, small but real. "Then I guess we start today." She finished the muffin and reached for her backpack. She hesitated for a moment, then wrapped her arms around me. "Thank you for seeing me," she whispered. I held her tightly. "Thank you for letting me." When she pulled away, her eyes were clear. Not free. Not yet. But beginning. She asked if I could hate him for her, and in that moment I finally did. Tomorrow the officers return to serve the final order and the house will shift for good. They came at 7:43 a.m. 2 cruisers. No lights, no sirens. Quiet entry just like they'd promised. Officer Keats was first up the walk, same coat, same calm. The second officer was someone new, broad shoulders, shaved head, blue gloves already on. I met them on the porch. Leah was still upstairs brushing her hair. I didn't tell her they were arriving this early. I wanted her to feel the result, not the lead-up. "You're clear to proceed?" Keats asked. I nodded. He hasn't tried contact. No calls. No emails. But his brother drove by 2 days ago. Slowed down in front of the house. Just once. She made a note in a small pad. "We'll include that for court." "Are you ready to post the notice?" I reached into the folder and pulled out the sealed envelope. Final protection order. Enforcement copy. I watched as they taped it to the glass storm door, center-aligned, legal language visible from the street. "Subject has been notified formally," Keats said. "Any violation is now a criminal matter." The other officers spoke for the first time. "We'll do one full perimeter check. Do you have access to the garage?" "Yes. Any weapons remain, no firearms, just tools. Hammers gone. Already noted in case log." He nodded. Back in 5. They moved like a pair, one circling the yard, the other moving through rooms. I watched them through the window as they checked the alleyway fence, the side gate, the basement window. Keats walked back inside and said, "Clean perimeter. You're good to go." I asked her, "Does it ever feel like enough?" She didn't answer right away. "It feels like the beginning of enough. That's all we can aim for right now. What happens next? The court date. The order holds for 90 days renewable. If he violates it once, the DA steps in. And if he doesn't, then he disappears. Quietly. Like they always do when you finally shine a light." I stood in the doorway as the cruisers pulled away. It wasn't until they turned the corner that I realized Leah was standing behind me. "It's done," she asked. "It's done," I said. "The order's active. Posted. Enforced." She looked at the glass, read the heading silently. "It looks like a parking citation," she said. "But it's everything." "Yes," I said. "It really is." She reached out and touched the paper lightly. "I thought I'd feel more." "You will. Give it time." She nodded. "Do you still have the folder locked in the desk?" "Can we throw it out?" "No," I said. "We need it for court. But one day, yes, one day, we left the paper up for the full 72 hours required. Some neighbors noticed. Mrs. Barron crossed the street with her dog and didn't say a word. Just looked at the notice, then at me, then back at her sidewalk. She didn't smile. But she didn't turn away either. On the 3rd day, I removed the posting. Folded it, placed it back in the folder, sealed it again. That night, Leah stood at the bottom of the stairs and said, "Can I sleep with the hallway light off tonight? Are you sure?" "Yes, I want to try." "Okay. Will you check the camera once?" "Already did. Nothing." She exhaled slowly. "Good." She went upstairs without looking back. I sat in the living room, unsure of what to do with the quiet. It wasn't dangerous anymore, but it was unfamiliar. I opened the folder once more, not to read, just to hold. The weight of it, the edges, the fact that something so ugly could be flattened into paper and still carry power. I wondered how many other mothers were doing the same thing in different states, on different porches, with different names in their folders. I thought about how many didn't get this far. I closed the drawer, locked it, went to bed. At 1:42 a.m., I woke up again. Not from noise, just habit. I stared at the ceiling for 5 minutes before turning to check the feed. Still blank, still safe, still mine. In the morning, Leah was already dressed. She made toast, asked for my keys. "You want to drive?" I asked. "Just to the corner. You can switch with me after." "Okay." She looked taller in the doorway. Straighter. I followed her outside, the morning light already, beginning to warm. As we got into the car, she said, "Can I tell the judge something when the day comes?" "Of course. Even if it's just one sentence, anything you want." She paused, buckled her seatbelt. "Then I want to say this. He doesn't get to erase me. I was here. I remember." I stared at her, then reached for her hand. "Say it just like that." "I will." She started the car. The engine turned without hesitation. They taped the order to the door like it was just paper, but it was armor. Tomorrow, Leah writes her impact statement, and I let her write it alone. I didn't read the statement until she handed it to me, folded twice, creased with precision, like she didn't want it to look emotional, just official. "You don't have to," she said, "but I want you to know what I said." I nodded and took it with both hands. I waited until she went upstairs, then sat at the kitchen table with the old folder beside me. The envelope inside was sealed, now case numbers, logs, camera footage, every affidavit and timestamp locked down in sequence, but I placed it beside her single page like two chapters of the same story. I unfolded the paper. Her handwriting was clean, deliberate, full of pauses that mattered. She had written it with a black pen, no crossouts, no second guesses. "Your Honor," it began, "my name is Leah Ellis and I am 15 years old. I am writing this because I need you to hear it from me, not from files or officers or therapists, but from the person it happened to. When people ask what happened, they expect details. But the truth is, the worst parts were not the nights. The worst parts were the mornings after, when he would smile at me like nothing had happened. When he'd pass me the milk at breakfast. When I had to pretend the dream was mine. It wasn't. It was his. He walked into it, not me. I want you to know I did not let him in. I want you to know I locked the door. And I want you to know he came anyway. I remember the color of his shirt. I remember the sound of his breath. I remember how my fingers would curl under the blanket so he wouldn't see them shake. I remember how I hated my body for not yelling. But I also remember the day I told my mom. I remember the exact way she looked at me and didn't question a word. That's when the real remembering started. That's when I knew I wasn't crazy, or dirty, or confused. I was just a girl who had been made small in her own house, and now I want to be tall again, so I'm writing this to stand tall, to say in my own voice that I deserve the rest of my life back, that I will not stay inside the version of myself he tried to write. I have my own pen, I have my own story, and this is the last page he'll ever touch. I didn't cry until the last 3 lines, and then I couldn't stop. I folded it back, slowly pressed the crease flat and placed it in its own folder, labeled it Leah, Impact. I sealed it, locked it, walked to her door and knocked once. "Come in," she said. She was sitting cross-legged on her bed, sketchpad in her lap. "I read it," I said. "Is it too much? It's perfect." "Do you think they'll believe me?" "They already do," I said. "But that page, that's not for them. That's for you." She nodded. "Then I'm glad I wrote it. So am I. Can we get rid of the old camera?" "Which one?" "The first one. The one he unplugged." "Yes," I said. "Let's do it together." We went into the garage. The old unit was still in the drawer, lens cracked slightly at the edge, wire-frayed timestamp worn from the side label. She picked it up like it was something rotten. "Where?" she asked. "Trash burn neither," I said. "Let's bury it." We walked to the backyard with a garden trowel, found a spot near the base of the oak tree. She dug the hole herself, planted the device like a bad root, covered it slowly. I don't want to remember it, she said. Then you don't have to. But I still want to know it's down there. It will be, I said, and it won't grow. That night we watched a movie. Not a good one. Just noise. Just something to take up the room. She leaned against my shoulder by the second act. By the credits, she was asleep. I didn't move. I memorized the weight of her head on my arm, the evenness of her breath, the absence of fear in the corners of the room. The house no longer felt haunted. It felt reclaimed. A week later, we received the court notice formal review date scheduled. Witness statements accepted. Victim impact statement attached. Prosecution pending. Order extended indefinitely. Keats included a note. Tell Leah, she's stronger than most grown men I've met in uniform. I did. She laughed. She said, "That's weird." I said, "It's true." That night we made pasta together. She chopped the basil. I lit the candles. We didn't talk about the case. We didn't talk about him. We just cooked, ate, smiled. When we finished, she looked at me and said, "Do you think I'll ever be normal again?" "No," I said, "but not because you're broken, because you're something else now, something better." "What's that hole?" She blinked. "What if I forget how I'll remind you?" She nodded. "Okay, then I'm not afraid." I cleaned the dishes alone after she went to bed. I turned off the cameras, every single one. I stood in the hallway in the dark. No fear, no noise, just the kind of silence that feels earned. She buried the camera like a root she never wanted to water again, and this time when she closed her door it was because she finally could.